Why do we tell stories?
Why stories are so important in our lives, why we crave them so much.
What makes a great story?
Why stories affect us.
How do you tell a great story?
How we tell stories, who we tell stories to and for.
What is your story?
What should I write?
Is this a story that I should tell, that I'm able to tell, or I'm interested in telling?
What stories to tell and what not to tell, what to keep out.
Can you tell the story?
What do you want to write about? Like, what's your idea?
Is this the actual right idea for the story? Is this the right story to tell based on that idea?
What turns you on about that idea?
What type of writing really excited you?
Are you writing what you like to write, or are you writing what you like to watch?
Does this hit me on a gut level?
After months of doing this, what am I still responding to? What am I still interested in?
What interests you? What will sustain you?
Why do you want to tell the story?
Why am I telling this story?
Why are you the person to tell this story?
Why this story? Why now? Why you?
Why I would want to tell this story, thinking about why this would be important or how I can make it important on some level or make it personal to me.
How is this my story? How is, whatever this story is, how does it relate to me? So that I can use my emotions to go to tell this story better.
Can you tell it honestly?
Am I challenging myself? And so if I'm not challenged, or if I'm not surprised, or if I'm not in a new place by the end of the writing that I was at the start, then I haven't done my own job to myself.
What is my point of view in trying to tell a story? What am I trying to get at that's different?
What's going to make my voice different?
What can you write? What's the story that only you can write, the stories that only you can write, or the themes that only you can write?
What can you create that isn't something that's just an imitation of what others are doing, but that's unique to you, that no one else could have created, that you create something fresh in the world that's truthful and meaningful?
Is this fresh? Is this original? Is this authentic to the story you're trying to tell?
What is your world view? What has happened to you in your life that has caused you pain and given you something to say? And how does your writing reflect that?
How to get out there in the world, how to get out of there, for many reasons. They have to figure out how to get out of their home and out of their comfort zone.
What experiences can I have that are going to later inform my writing? And that's a fun way to live.
What's your deepest, most personal, embarrassing secret?
If you had no fear, if there was no fear, what story would you tell?
If I was guaranteed success, absolutely guaranteed success, doing anything as a writer, what would I be doing?
And if you look inside and you feel like the energy maybe isn't there, you need to ask yourself, is that a story I really want to tell?
If it's not fun, you're writing it, it's not fun, why are you writing it?
But the question is, are you then going to be honest with yourself and say, I don't like writing this, so then you'll stop writing that and start writing what you do like?
Reminding yourself of why you started this to begin with.
If you start there, the audience is going, what happened?
The end is often the beginning.
I often write backwards. I often think of an ending. And then I think, what's a fun way to get there?
How does it end? Like, what is the ending? I need to know where this is going, and then I figure out how do we get there?
How does the writer know where the beginning is?
Where to start the story?
What's the hook?
What's the hook? You know, that central conceit.
Where do you see this going?
Where I'm going.
What genre is this story?
What's the genre?
A true identity and what genre it is.
What if we did this as a drama? Wait a minute, what if we did this as a thriller? What if you spun it this way?
What's the premise here? What's your narrative question driving the story?
What are the things that one really needs in a story idea?
How universal is it?
Seeing something in the world and thinking about how it makes me feel, and then oftentimes hypothesizing from that or extrapolating from that into a sort of genre story.
How are people going to relate to this? Can anybody find something in this relationship I'm creating, in this conflict that I'm creating, that they recognize something?
How can we keep this grounded? You know, how can we keep this story believable?
What's it going to be about?
What the hell is this movie going to be about?
What's the heart and soul of this?
What's the theme?
And what's your theme? And what's your thematic question?
Their theme, about what they want to say.
What is it that we're trying to say, and how are we saying it, and are we really affecting not only good story, but are we really saying something with the way that we're going?
What are you trying to say with this? What is the themes? What is it you, the director, the writers, the actors, what do you want to say? What do you want to say with this story?
And where there's the plot line, there's a theme line. So the plot line answers the question, what is the story about? The theme line answers the question, what does the story mean?
How is this a story that everyone in every time and every place could sign on to?
What is the story? What is the movie story? Or what is the TV story? What is this? What is this thing that's happening? What is this big event?
And what are we watching for sort of the bulk of the movie?
And then I just start to think about what the movie might look like in my head.
What do we see and what do we hear?
We don't really talk about imagination, like what that is, and like how we like, what if that whole thing.
It's one thing to have a great idea, but I think how you get into that idea, that's a huge part of it.
What a situation is and what a story is.
Do you know how to listen to a story? Do you know how to hear a story?
Is this big enough to be a movie?
To me, that's what the story is. What's the central problem here?
It's like, what was that about? Well, it was about whether the person would get this.
I'll just number page 1 to 100, and I'm like, what happens on this is every minute of the movie, this is every page. What happens on every minute of this movie?
What happens next?
What's the beginning of the story? What's the end of Act 1? What's the end of Act 2? And what's the ending of the story?
Do I actually have a beginning, middle, and end, and do I have a story?
What actually happens in this movie from A, B to C? Like, how does it start? What is the middle? What is the end?
You start to think about the overall story, the act breakdowns, when things are going to happen, where they need to happen.
How did it get from this to that?
All of these little details about how we actually get from A to C are the things that people don't think about until they're on the page, and then they're stuck and they stop.
What's the problem at the center of the story? Does this problem sound really compelling and entertaining to watch? Is an audience going to care about this problem that this main character or these characters are trying to solve?
Can you come up with a puzzle? Can you come up with some interesting image or some line of dialogue or something that is puzzling? It leaves a gap in our understanding and makes us wonder.
What might be around the corner that could be the thing that, that explains something?
Is something that anyone can watch and be like, I don't know what I would do in that situation. I want to see how this person's going to do it.
Why are we following this character? What did that moment have to do with that moment?
What am I trying to say, and why have I selected this character to take the journey with?
Why this character? Why is this woman the protagonist?
Who the characters are, what the log line is, what the pitch is.
What's the situation, and what character can be tested the most in that situation.
What is the effect of this plot on this character? That's what we actually care about.
I think it starts with how you define what a hero is even.
What is the heroic journey of this character?
How do you see this character? Usually the hero of the story.
Are you writing characters that you know very well, or are you writing characters that you observe?
For me, it's like I like to create the characters, put them in a scenario, and see where they go.
Whose story is told? How is it told? Who are the heroes and sheroes? Who are the villains?
Knowing who your characters are, knowing who's gonna go on this journey, figuring out why we should care about them.
Who the protagonist is, what their journey is through the story, what transformation they're going through.
Who are they? What are they about?
Who are these characters really? Like, what do they want?
If you just met this person for 5 minutes at the grocery store, never seen them before, what would your first couple takeaways be?
Do I know, can I feel, can I sense, do I have any idea of what's really going on inside these characters?
Who's your protagonist? What's their goal?
What is their visible goal that they're going after?
What they want and what they need. What does the central character want? If I don't know that, the story doesn't work.
What does the main character want, and what are they trying to avoid?
What does the character want? Why now, and what happens if they don't get it? So it's asking those three questions, which form a kind of litmus test to whether the scene is worth it.
How does the personal dilemma of the central character link to the professional pursuit? And really being clear on if there's a link, and very often there isn't a link.
What's the nature of the problem, or what's the nature of the goal for the main character?
Am I following the journey of this character?
Are they taking action toward the goal?
Do they think it's going to move them closer to their goal, or at least overcome an obstacle to achieving their goal?
Are they reacting to what happens to them?
If the protagonist isn't compelling, if we don't have an emotional connection to them, then what's the point, right?
What a character is.
Who she wants to be versus who she is.
Define what she does. Tell us what does she do, and that'll tell us who she is.
Who your character is by action. What is he doing that tells the audience who they, or he or she,
What are they doing that tells the audience who they are?
I want to know what the character's physically doing. Like, what am I watching them do?
What was his intention? How, you know, what was his plan? Did he have a plan? Is he going on? Just all of these things that are going on inside the character.
Does anybody in your story actually make a positive change in their personality? I think there should always be some element of sacrifice. And remember that the word sacrifice means to make sacred.
How is this character going to change in the course of this story? What's the character's arc? What do they have to learn? What kind of courage do they have to show? Because if you can identify that, in my mind, you've identified what the movie's about.
Identify your main three characters. What is their path? And then, do you want them to stay there? Do you want them to grow into the next level? Or are they going to be taken down to a lower level and then try to struggle their way back up? Or maybe they're switching from one path to another. That's a lot of dramatic conflict there. Maybe you've got someone on the warrior path who wants to give that up and go be a poet, get on the lover path. And so what are the conflicts there that arise from them shifting their arc path?
Who they are and what that relationship is.
Who needs to come into that character's life to help them on this journey, help them accomplish this mission, and what is that relationship like?
Is there a connection? Is there a clear want, which leads to the dramatic question, which is, will this protagonist successfully save the love of his life, whatever?
That whole of identity of who am I, who loves me, who do I love back, and where do I belong?
What little things can you do to make a character stick out in someone's mind?
Why is the character this way? And what does the character love more than anything in the world? And why is that? And what do they fear more than anything in the world? And why is that?
How to get that character to believe in the truth that's already beating in their heart.
What makes them a compelling, relatable person, even before the main story problem has kicked in? What makes us just kind of want to follow them?
Where are they when the movie starts? Are they in a happy place? Are they in a sad place? Did they just break up with a boyfriend? Are they on top of the world? Did they just get fired? Is there a pivotal thing that happened that damaged them?
What state of mind, emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, whatever, do I want to send this character into the scene? How does he start? And what is his intention, his objective at the beginning?
Am I caring about this person? Do I hate this person? Do I love it? Like, do I want them to get together with that guy at the end, or do I want them to not?
How are they going to get from A to B?
What do they want, and what are we anticipating is going to get in their way?
If you have a main issue about a character wanting something, and there's obstacles, you have to know who that character is. You have to connect with them emotionally. You have to know what the obstacles are. You have to, and then once you know those things, preferably what's at stake, then the question's been raised, the tension is out there.
Figuring out what the stakes are going to be the why. Why am I here? Why do I care? What's going on? What are they going to win? What are they going to lose? Because if not, then why do I care if they reach the goal? If there's nothing at stake for them, then I am going to be that much less invested.
Why is this personal for the main character?
If the stakes aren't there, if the story, if the hero succeeds or doesn't succeed or whatever, why does it matter? If it doesn't matter, I don't care.
Why are any of these characters doing this? Or like, why do we care about them? You know, like, what are the emotional journeys like of the characters?
What's the emotional journey of this story as well, not just the plot?
How do we elevate the emotion so that we feel this more?
How you feel, how you felt in that moment, where you were, you know, let me feel that too. Don't be stingy.
What really hurts and where my courage has to come from, and in turn where this character's courage and her truth has to come from.
Why are you telling the present, not the past, you know? And so something just as emotional needs to occur in your present in the film. It needs to happen to this character. That pain needs to happen to this character. How do you achieve that, you know? How do you achieve a trauma of a past to affect the present?
Was the character, after that loss, still going to be able to get what they wanted?
Once I know what a character wants, the next question is why. And you better have a good answer to why a character wants what they want. Why do they react a certain way, you know, which creates the plot. It all comes to character. It's all psychology.
How well do you know the protagonist? How well do you even know your own characters?
I think the biggest why, ironically, is the setting up of the why. Why the character wants what they want.
When this happened in the script, why did the character do it? And why do you find that so compelling? And when the character did this.
Why somebody is doing what they're doing. So their motivations become huge, and that we understand their motivations.
What's going on inside that character that causes him or her to do those things.
But the why, in terms of writing, connects to the reason why characters do what they do. That's what audiences really want to know, and that comes to motivation. So motivation is really important. I mean, it's the cliche actor's question, right? Like, what's my motivation? Why am I doing this? Why am I saying this in a scene?
If I don't ever understand why a character makes a choice on the screen, then yeah, I disengage.
How well do you know what she was really thinking, really feeling, really wanting, really desiring, really expecting, really fearing at that time? Do I know, can I feel, can I sense, do I have any idea of what's really going on inside these characters?
What the character wants to truly believe about himself, but nothing in the world is saying this is such.
Who that woman or man is, and what they're like, and what their world looks like.
Who they are, or what their, how you would describe that character and what their journey is going to be.
If me and this character went out to get a drink at a bar or something, what would we talk about? How would the conversation flow? Would he be doing the talking? Would I be doing the talking? Would it be balanced, not balanced? Would they leave after 5 minutes because they have something to do? I always try to think of like the broader world a character inhabits outside of just the script. How am I feeling about these people, about these characters?
Who they are physically, emotionally, socially. You got to figure out what their vulnerabilities are, what their flaws are, what they're good at, what they're not good at, what their insecurities are, because we're all motivated by that. We're motivated by our insecurities.
What really is the struggle? There's the external stuff, but you also have to give them the internal stuff. What are the insecurities? What are the demons? All these things.
What is the hero's wound? What are they afraid of?
How vulnerable you were, how stupid you were, how arrogant you were, which means how human you were at that time. Can you do that?
One of the most fundamental things to understanding who the character is that one single thing, the flaw.
What's their flaw?
How does your protagonist experience temptation?
What's the big core wound in your hero?
What if he were actually human and not all polished and perfect?
What is their kind of quick takeaways from a quick appearance versus like the deep down stuff that they don't let out?
What is the flaw in them that is actually making their problem worse?
How are they their own worst enemy? What is in them that's vilifying their, internal self? How do they have to overcome their own, mind to accomplish what they're setting out to do?
And what the flaws to the character are, before we start recognizing what this inner conflict is, or what this identity is, or what dark places they might go.
What is the negative narrative that has come from that wound, and how is that getting in the way of the central character achieving the goal? And then how, through the pursuit, is the central character one step toward healing that wound?
What is that personal problem inside that is hurting the hero in such a fundamental way that it's ruining their life?
What is the question that torments the hero forever, that will never be resolved? What's the unsolvable dilemma for the hero that will never, ever be solved?
What is the fear that is crippling in some way the character at the beginning of the story, and how do they find the courage to overcome that?
What is the character's central flaw? And then what is the strength that in the end, in a comedy, they either learn the opposite of, or in a tragedy, was the strength that they failed to learn the opposite of.
Imagine your protagonist transformed at the end of the story. How is your protagonist relating differently to other characters at the end of the story? How are they relating differently than they were at the beginning? And what do they understand at the end of the story that they didn't understand at the beginning?
If you want the audience to have an eventual cathartic experience in your story, that you need to have that character be good, be appropriate, be consistent, and be universal, right? So what does that mean?
What is the message? What is the thing that they are changing to?
What is the experience like for this person going through this? What are they feeling? What are they thinking? How is this causing them to change or reprioritize what's in their life?
How they're going to grow and change, what their thrust is going to be in the story.
What happens when the character figures it out? This moment of recognition. Oh my God.
The effect that these events are having on them, that will help you get in touch with what the meaning of the story is.
Who's the antagonist? What's their goal and their flaw?
Is he going to break down the villain?
Why are they your antagonist?
Why your villain is right and why your hero is wrong?
What is heroic behavior? What is dastardly behavior?
Not thinking who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, who's the one I'm rooting for. In the end, it's just, let's get to know them. Let's see who they are.
A good villain is, you understand why they're doing what they're doing, and you understand what they want just as much as you understand what the protagonist wants.
How can I make it more difficult for them, first of all, but also, instead of having them announce their feelings or desires, can they do it without saying anything? Or if they, in a conversation, how can they hide their true desires or feelings and cover it up with more surface, superficial, subtextual language?
So where there's dialogue, there's subtext. And where there's action, there's intention. What are the characters' intentions behind their actions? Subtextually, what is going on between these characters? What's really going on? Now there's a private objective. What am I really doing? What's really driving me? Is it my control over her or my dominance of her? You know, what is the really deeper objective? Am I trying to prove to her that I'm a good leader? I don't know, whatever it is.
How do you write natural dialogue? How do you write the way people really speak?
What do they say? Listen to what people were saying and how they were saying it, and what inflections. Am I keeping that rhythm? Is that cadence still flowing?
When you go to say something, there's probably 100 different ways you could think of to say it. Why are you choosing the particular way you choose? And why your character is choosing to say something that way, and what they really don't want to reveal. Like, why will they go to this length, but they won't go just a little bit more vulnerable?
What is the character hiding from the other person consciously? What is she hiding from him, and what is she hiding from herself? What's the thing that she's not yet aware of that is really driving her?
To know what they want to conceal and what they want to give.
What does the main character know, and what does the main character not know?
Here's my character, now set them free. What are they going to do once they're out in the world?
If they're doing this, and they're in this kind of job or in this kind of situation, then they most likely came from this kind of background that would bring them into this world. How? And then you sort of reverse engineer it and then go back.
So you just have to understand, first off, what a story world is.
What's the world of your show?
What's something that surprises you about this world?
How much of a world is explored?
Can you take your main character, your protagonist, your hero, can you take them out of the story world and have your story world still be interesting? Can you take the story out of the story world and still have it be interesting?
How do we make a world, a sci-fi world that doesn't exist yet?
Then how do we create it?
How to build a world, which is a super hard and fascinating thing to do. If there's this technology that we create, like, how does that affect the world?
What's the commentary that they're trying to put into any individual story?
Do you have a theme that matters? What do you want to say about the world?
What am I trying to say with my movie? What am I trying to say with my book? What am I trying to say with my video game? And what's a world that needs to hear that message?
How does politics work? How does religion work? How are people? How does this technology affect them?
A lot of people focus on high concept when it comes to story, and people don't focus on how to create a high concept for the world itself.
Well, do we want to make a heightened version of that? Do we want to, stick straight to the historical accuracy?
Can I make a story world logline out of it that's independently interesting? And by adding in irony and a high concept to the world itself, now you have some commerciality and some interest and something that is that by itself can grab people's attention.
It's what happens next, what happens next, what happens next.
What's the conflict in the scene?
What does my character want in this scene?
What the scene is about, what's the conflict, what do they want, how is it serving the story?
Who are the people that populate that scene?
What does each character want? Do I know what each character wants? Do I know what the obstacles are? Do I know what's in the way of him or her achieving what they want in the scene? Do they achieve what they want in the scene? Do they think they have achieved it and maybe they haven't? Have they achieved it and maybe they don't realize they have?
Well, what are the scenes that express that excitement? You know, that really, really show those beats that you have to show on screen.
How you keep that interesting, how you move from one scene to the next.
What does this scene cause to happen? And how is it the effect of what happened before it?
You've kind of looked at the scene in terms of tracking what the character is going to go through throughout the entire script. Where does this scene fit into it? How is it setting up for other things? What does it need to do?
And does the scene serve that? If not, do I need it? Can I change it? Can I toss it?
Does this mean we need another scene?
Where do they want to be, or what do they want to have happen to the end of the scene?
Looking at the scenes like they're little movies, right? Like, what is it setting up for me? What's the goal of this scene? And then how does it resolve to get me to the next thing?
Where structurally does the scene occur?
Do you have enough scenes where the audience can relate? And are they going on an emotional journey, an interior journey, an external journey, whatever, the combination of both?
What are they going to do to try and do that?
And then you go into the second act where you have to look at the conflicts. Is there enough? Is what the steps he is doing, are they escalating in a way that at the same time is believable, but also doesn't need too much patience?
What's gone really bad for everybody? Like, why is this the end of the second act?
How can you ramp up the tension?
How is it then going to affect the rest of the story?
What is the purpose of a story?
Why do people resonate with certain stories?
What is it meant to do?
The last frame comes up and it finishes. What do I want the audience to feel at that point?
What is it that they're trying to accomplish in the story, and why should we care?
Why should the audience be on the edge of their seat right now? What are they wondering about? What do they want to find out? Why do they care? What do they identify with?
If I'm sitting watching this movie, am I moved forward at every single moment? Am I learning something new? Am I sucked into this world, whether the first act break came at page 30 or 70, whatever it may be?
Where are they excited?
When we go see this movie, what are we in for?
Everything the audience needs to know or experience to understand what's happening, why it's happening, and why they should care.
Who's the audience for this?
Who's your audience?
Who my audience is.
How is the audience going to tie into the story emotionally?
Does it grab me and does it keep me?
Do I think this is going to strike a chord with people?
First thing I'm looking at is, does it grab me? Do I care? Is it a story that I feel emotional about, compelled by? You know, if it's a scary movie, am I scared? If it's a comedy, have I laughed? If it's emotional, have I, gotten a lump in my throat?
How is it that something I'm seeing from people I don't know is making me cry?
How do I relate that to the audience?
The audience is constantly wondering, well, why did that happen? Or where is this taking us? And as soon as you can't ask a question and then answer it at the end. You have to ask a little question, you have to answer it in the next scene or the next chapter or whatever it is, but then you have to pose another question. And so really, a powerful story is one that continues to ask questions and deliver meaningful answers and satisfactory answers.
At this moment in the script, what are the question marks that I as an audience am burning to have answered, that make me turn the page? Why am I interested in continuing this?
What story are they watching? What's happening? Why is it happening? Why is it interesting or not interesting? Who are the characters? How are they experiencing the characters? How would they describe the characters? Are they engaged with the characters? Or are they not engaged with the characters?
What does the audience know? What does the audience not know?
Wow, what's going to happen to him? Ooh, this is an interesting. Oh, I wasn't expecting that.
If a movie ends and you're trying to piece out in your mind where this character went and what they did, and you're still thinking about the decisions they made, then that's a successful film, because it makes you feel like that world was real and you cared about those characters. You found them interesting enough to contemplate.
Why does it matter that they solve this problem? Why does the audience care whether they solve it or not? Is it big enough and is it relatable enough?
What do I want the audience to feel when they leave the cinema?
what happens to that audience the moment the movie's over and what they're taking out of not what they've experienced during just the 2 hours, but what they take out of there.
The question for the writer is not what you're going to say to the audience in your movie, but what the audience is going to say to themselves after this movie.
How do you want the listener to receive the story? What do you want the listener to get from the story? How do you want the listener to see you as the storyteller, or even to see you as the person in the story?
What did I get from that? What is any residual benefit to me from my life did I get from that?
What do you want them to be thinking about, worried about, fantasizing, talking about, discussing with each other?
How are you going to let the audience know that?
Strangers who don't know what you're going for, when they read your script, do they experience a story you experience? Do they experience the characters you experience?
What works and what doesn't work?
Which character is not needed? Can I take two characters and combine them?
What moments that allow for creativity are really worth it, and what were just sort of experiments even in process?
Why it wasn't working, why it wasn't resonating with people.
Where people are not experiencing what you're intending, and why.
I'm going, why? Why is it falling apart?
Is this any good, or is this like really terrible? And if it is really terrible, can I salvage it? You know, is there a way to make it better?
How can I say this better? How can it sound more real? How can it sound more authentic?
What's missing? What's not being communicated? Is this your intention here?
What's not there will tell me what's missing.
That's it?
This works, but how can we make this better? How can we go deeper? How can it be more meaningful?
This doesn't work. What about?
What are the things that aren't working for people, and then I'll figure out why, and I'll figure out how to solve them. Where is the screenplay slow?
Does the plot have drive? I'm just focusing on the plot. Are there any big holes? Does the piping go together?
Does it flow? Does it have a natural flow? Does it make me want to turn the pages?
Is the story interesting enough? Usually for my horror stuff, it's like, is there enough stuff in here to care about the characters, but am I also coming up with enough scares that we haven't seen before?
What is working and what is not?
How does the story work?
Like, what would be a cool, and then, oh, okay, now how do I get there?
Oh my God, what a great expression. What does that mean? I'm gonna take that.
If you ask the questions that are just the normal ones, you get the normal answers. If you start asking weird questions, you start getting, the answers you didn't even know existed. So, you have to be creative when doing research.
What's going to happen when they find out the truth?
Whatever you made happen, something has to happen next, and it's what happens next, what happens next, what happens next, what happens next.
I personally want to know what happens next.
Well, what's going to happen next? I don't know. I can't wait to find out either.
And then what if this happens and you're just like, oh my God.
What if?
What if?
And then they thought of it and they thought, why not? Let's try that.
What was your process? How did you get to an answer? What was that answer?
What is this about? What are you trying to say? What's the overall theme of this? What are we exploring here? And get everybody all the way back to that ground level idea.
What these, quote, rules are that actually make for a great story, and these so-called conventional rules that are not true. They're certainly not true now, and they probably never were.
What it is that I am about. What's my mission, or what's important here?
What are the important things? What are the essential things that you want to convey? What is most important to you, both in your life, like what do you want to do, but I think also in your writing.
What story really should be in people and in society?
How do we nourish people's minds and hearts?
Am I actually creating something that's making the world a better place? Am I actually sending out a message that I would want people to take to heart?
If art and film and writing isn't the place, then where is the place to do that?
I want you to become them by falling into darkness backward. Can you do that?
You come up with something like that and you go, oh, an audience will be like, what?
It does take courage, and to make a good movie takes even more courage. You have to take a chance. You have to go out on a limb. You have to do something that hasn't been tried before, because if we've seen it all before, why do we want to see it again?